Oh my gosh. Yes, I would love to be on your podcast. Okay, yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Crap. How are you supposed to be a good podcast guest? What happens when you get invited onto someone's podcast and you have no idea what to do? How do you make a good first impression? What things are you supposed to say? How can I be prepared? Like all of the things, y'all. How does this work? Well, don't worry. Calm down, take a deep breath, because today we're going to talk about how you can be an amazing podcast guest. Hi, Krystal here, and today I want to talk about being an amazing podcast guest because personally, I've been on some podcasts and I know what I'm doing and I feel comfortable with it. Because I have my own podcast. Maybe you don't. Maybe you were invited kind of on a whim and someone was like, hey, that sounds amazing. I would love for you to talk about what you are an expert in. Do you want to be on my podcast? And your heart just kind of skipped a beat and you're like, I have no idea what to do. I don't know what to say. How can I be prepared for this? Well, then today, this message is for you, my friend, because I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can be an amazing podcast guest. So the first thing I want you to do, number 1, is do your research. I want you to listen to at least one episode where the podcast host is doing an interview with someone else. Now, I know I've listened to podcasts where they're doing another interview with a co-host or someone else. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an interview who is like, they either don't know each other personally or someone that has the same kind of relationship that you are going to have with the podcast host. Go listen to at least one interview because I want you to get the feel for how the conversation is going to go. Are they going to ask really deep personal questions? Are there certain rapid fire questions that you should be prepared for? Are there going to be other things that you're going to discuss that you don't want to get blindsided by, right? The more prepared you feel going into the interview, the more confident you're going to feel about your answers and how you carry yourself during this podcast interview. The second thing that I want you to do is to be prepared with a question. I remember whenever I was getting prepared for a job interview and someone told me, make sure that you have a question ready for the person that's going to be interviewing you. And I know that might sound weird because this technically isn't a job interview, but I think as a host myself, it's kind of nice when someone turns around and asks you a question, even if it's simple as, how is your day today? I think that being prepared with a question ready to go, even if you don't have to use it, is a great way to show the host that you're there, you mean business, and you are invested in the time that you're about to spend together. Most podcast hosts will tell you everything you need to know before you actually go live, but just for kicks, here are a few questions that you could ask them. Can you tell me more about the audience we're talking to today? Is there a certain angle that you want us to take or a certain perspective that you want us to go to this conversation with? How long do you plan for the interview to go, or the conversation if y'all are just kind of chatting? And when will this episode go live? So I'm curious, is this your very first podcast interview, or are you just kind of looking for some tips and strategies that way you can improve your interview game? So comment below and tell me if this is your very first podcast interview or you're just looking for some new tips and tricks. Okay, let's get back to the strategies we're talking about today. The third thing I want you to do is I want you to thank them for having you on their show. I think that it's so nice and it's really, I appreciate it as a podcast host when someone is like, thank you for scheduling this interview. And then thank you for having me on the show. And then while we're actually live, they repeat it again. Thank you for having me on the show today. And then they say it again at the end. I know that this is something that I try to do as a podcast guest. And if it comes from a genuine place, I know that other people appreciate it as well. So be sure to thank your host on air, off air, and everywhere in between, because it is something that you should just realize it's such a blessing to be able to go onto someone else's platform and share the value that you have to share with their audience. So always be grateful for the opportunities that come your way. The fourth thing I want to recommend for you today is to make sure you are adding value to the host and their audience. What's some of your best information that you can take into this podcast interview? Maybe you have strategies that you share with everyone and you really want to hit home with those, or maybe you just want to go deeper into a personal story that you have. Whatever the case, make sure that value to the host and their audience is your top priority with this interview, because one, you could potentially have customers or other people that want to come follow you on social media, or they want to listen to your podcast or go watch your YouTube channel, whatever the case may be. But the second thing is when you add value, and this is like the number one thing that I teach to everybody, when you add value, you have a value exchange. People will show up for you if you show up for them. So always add value in whatever way possible whenever the opportunity comes your way. Plus, the more relatable you are to the audience, the more likely it is that they're going to go check out what you have to offer or go follow you on social or do whatever it is that you've asked them to do. But make sure that you add value in everything that you do. So the fifth thing I have to share with you today is I want you to make the traffic count. So we're talking about being an amazing podcast guest, right? Well, this tip is actually for you. If you are going out of your way to be a guest on someone else's podcast, or they've asked you to come onto their show, then make the traffic count. There's a reason that you're doing this. Are you trying to sell your book? Are you trying to sell your product? Are you trying to get people to sign up for your live events? There are tons of reasons why you would go on someone else's podcast. So make sure that you make the traffic count for all of the listeners that come from the podcast host platform, right? The podcast that you're on. Make sure that you give them something of value to go to after the interview is over. I want you to tell them exactly what you want them to do. So for example, I have a free 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp that I promote everywhere. Like if you've been watching this channel, you've heard me talk about it because I talk about it in almost every single video. But I make sure that I tell the listeners, this is exactly where you go to sign up. It's krystalproffitt.com/podcast bootcamp. And that's where you can go. And then I give them a little bit about, it'll show you how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And it tells you the basics of podcasting. And it'll be, value, value, value. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to deliver value. But I'm also not just telling them, hey, go to krystalproffitt.com. Good luck. That's my website. I hope you find something valuable there. No. You want to make sure you make the traffic count. Tell them exactly where you want them to go. Is there a specific landing page, or do you have an events page, or is there a book on Amazon you want them to buy, or a specific YouTube video? Make sure to be as specific as possible and make the traffic count. So those are the 5 things that I want you to do to go and be an amazing podcast guest. I know you can do it. If you have delivering value as your number one priority, you can't go wrong, right? Like that's the number one thing. Try to deliver as much value as you can, and I promise it's going to work out in your favor. But if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and make sure that you subscribe. That way you can see all the other podcast videos we have coming out every single Friday. Be sure to check out these other amazing podcast videos. And if you're into podcasting, then make sure you join us in the 5-day free podcast bootcamp. And I'll see you here again on Friday for our next video. So keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.